what we're going to talk about today is the overhead squat assessment. Okay, so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about some of the compensation issues, and then we're going to do some of this stuff. And at some point, each one of you guys is going to get your overhead squat assessment. Stay a while. You guys will get your squat stuff looked at. You don't have to sit. So, why do we look at the overhead squat? And if we look at like the basis of everything that the NASM does for their general populace and their general clientele is based off of the overhead squat assessment. Okay? So when they talk about self-myofascial stuff, what to roll, what to stretch, it's based off the results from this. When they talk about what to strengthen, overactive, underactive, reciprocal inhibition, altered arthrokinematics, all that stuff that we've talked about over the course of the last 3 months is all based off of this. Okay? So, why this? Why not something else? Why not just a regular squat assessment or anything like that? Because the overhead squat, there are very few exercises that meet a couple basic criteria. One, they are simple enough that anybody can do them. Anybody at any level. Young, old, intermediate, beginner, advanced, in the middle. Anybody can squat, right? At least to a degree, or at least hypothetically. And the other thing is that there are very few exercises that involve all three major areas of the body simultaneously. Lower body, core, and upper body. The overhead squat, by the nature of the way that it works, can do that. It can involve all three major body areas at the same time. Okay? So that's why we're going to use this. This is an assessment that is designed and can assess a lot of different things. One, dynamic flexibility. Okay? Core strength. Spinal stabilization. Balance. Neuromuscular control. So as we go through, we're going to talk about all the major elements of how you do this. Okay, so this is something that either A, you could include as part of your basic fitness assessment procedure, along with your strength and your muscular endurance and your flexibility and all that good stuff. Okay, we'd probably do it after all that good stuff. Or some of these dynamic movement assessments, and the overhead squat is just the first, we could utilize almost as a first workout. Because in addition to the overhead squat assessment, there's also a single leg squat assessment. There's a pushing assessment, a pulling assessment. There are assessments for lower body agility, the shark skill test, or upper body movement agility and dynamic flexibility, range of motion, the Davies test. You can almost use those things even as a first workout. Okay? But as we do, again, the overhead squat, we will be looking then at all the different areas of our kinetic chain, right? What were the 5 checkpoints of our kinetic chain? Feet, ankle.
Hip, shoulder, knees.
Okay, knees. Yeah, let's keep them. Hip. Shoulder. And head, right? Yeah, so we've got these 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. Are we going to be able to take and look at all 5 of these kinetic chain checkpoints? Wait, it's a mouthful. From one angle?
No.
No, right? And in the overhead squat assessment, we're actually going to take 3. I know in your packets you have 2. You have 2 basic assessment points. Rachel. I'm going to give you a third. We're going to look at certain stuff from an anterior view, so from the front. We're going to look at certain stuff from a side view. We're even going to talk about a posterior view. Okay, some different things that we can look at from a posterior view. All right. So are there any questions so far? Cool. So as we have a client here, we're going to instruct. Okay, we're going to instruct them how to set up. And we'll go through that momentarily. We're going to instruct them that they're going to perform probably 4, 5, 6 reps, something like that, at each viewpoint. We can either A, move our client through our different viewpoints, or we can move ourselves through our different viewpoints. Either way. Generally, it's usually easiest if you have the client move, because then you can watch them reset, and you can see any movement deficits there as well. And we're going to make notations. As we go through this, it will allow us then, to look at everything we need to look at. So, first things first. Setup. The overhead squat assessment. 1, if at all possible, remove your footwear. Why? 2 reasons. What are the 2 reasons?
Could alter your stance.
I'm not worried about the toes. Say again?
Could alter your stance.
How so?
Elevation.
Okay, absolutely. It puts the foot, the shoe can put the foot in an elevated stance. Same reason we take off the shoes in a sit and reach test, right? Every shoe is different. Somebody's wearing 5-finger shoes like Ryan wears. Or a traditional running shoe like Doug has on, or anywhere in the middle. It's going to alter the stance, right? Excellent. So it puts the foot flat on the ground, right? Absolutely. And because it does that then, it will also force those intrinsic muscles in the foot to fire. Okay? Because if those muscles in the foot are not firing right, it can create movement deficit and movement compensation. So we want to see everything working the way that it's supposed to work. Okay? So first things first, we're going to have our client de-shoe. Okay? So now, we're flat. If they got long pants on, you might have them roll them up a little bit just so they're not stepping on their heels. We pay for them to squat down and pull their pants down. It's just weird and awkward. Feet are going to be shoulder width, with toes parallel. Okay? Hip width, shoulder width apart, toes parallel. We don't want the toes turned out at all. Okay, for assessment purposes, we want the toes parallel. As we even set our clients up for this eval, you might start to see things. Wow, that's really uncomfortable. Something should start clicking in your head right away. Okay, because theoretically, if I have my client close my eyes, this is something that I'll do periodically. Just have your client close their eyes and kind of, bounce around, just kind of shake around, move around in their space, and cue them stop. They should land with their feet between their hips and their shoulders, toes parallel. If they land or stand any other way, that's a reciprocal inhibition issue. That's an altered arthrokinematic issue. Something ain't right off. So if they have problems getting into position in the first place, that should start setting off flags and bells, right? Cool. So, we're in position here. Arms. should bisect the ears. Arms should bisect the ears. Okay, so what that means that my arms will be straight up over my head. Relax, don't have to be locked out or anything like that. Just relaxed up overhead. Elbows to ears. Okay? Same thing we tell you when we lift overhead, right? Elbows to ears. You and again, making the funky face, trying to get their arms up there. I did a demonstration with my students on Monday night, and he was here. Your arms all the way up here. He goes, all right. So now I immediately know that when he starts to squat, there's certain things that I'm going to see. Okay? So, from this position, I'm going to instruct my client, again, just like anything, get up, demonstrate, use shoulder or feet shoulder width, toes parallel, arms up, bisect the ears, just nice, easy, neutral grip. And you're going to squat to about chair depth, give or take a little bit. Okay? It doesn't have to be a parallel, but at least a chair depth, something like that. You know, I'm going to look at you from 3 different vantage points. We're going to take 5 reps or so, again, give or take a rep, at each vantage point. So, you know, just make your movements nice and fluid. You'll be here, okay? Yeah, and I'll instruct you. You'll turn 90 degrees, and you'll set up again. You'll do it again. I'll have you go, I'll take a look at anterior view, side view, posterior view. Cool?
Cool.
You guys with me so far? Neat. All right, so let's start looking at our different views and our different kinetic chain checkpoints. And let's see what we're looking at here, all right? So typically, once we set our clients up, usually, and it doesn't have to be, the views don't have to be taken in any specific order or anything like that, but usually the first view that you're going to take just out of nature is going to be an anterior view. Okay? You are going to look at your client straight on. Okay? Now, from this anterior view, which part of the kinetic chain, which parts of that kinetic chain am I going to be checking out? Well, I'm going to be checking out the feet. I'll be checking out the knees. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to be looking for, generally I'm going to be looking for, you know, a couple different things. At the feet, I'm going to be looking to see if the toes turn out. If the toes turn out, okay? Because if I'm looking at that, so what's going to happen, yeah, I'm going to over-exaggerate these a little bit, okay? So I'm here, and my client starts doing their squat, and they start getting in their squat, and those toes, all of a sudden, they're here, right? Toes aren't parallel anymore. They're kind of out this way, okay? Well, why? What does that mean? And technically, what that means is technically, your toes didn't actually pick up off the ground and move. What actually happened is that from here, your heels picked up and turned in, which subsequently heels in, toes out, right? Tomato, tomato. So what does that mean? Well, if the toes turn out, let's go here. Toes out. Okay? What that means is that I've got a certain set of musculature that is overactive. Overactive and tight, right? Because it's not allowing me to get into that squat position with the toes where they belong. And if the toes turn out, our overactive musculature typically, you're looking at lateral gastroc, See, and the reason that we do this at the end, because I know we've been talking about fitness assessment for 3 months now and 6 months for some of you guys, is because you have to have a background in all of this musculature to be able to understand this. You may think about 3 months ago, if I said lateral gastroc. What the hell are you talking about, right? So lateral gastroc.
Lateral gastroc.
Here. Underneath the gastroc, we've got the soleus. And the soleus kind of runs that lateral range between the tibia and the fibula, both down into that Achilles tendon, and even the biceps femoris. Now in this instance, it's not going to be all the biceps femoris, but just kind of the short head of it, which pulls more on the fibula. But we can see the others, but why biceps fem? The biceps fem is part of which muscle group? Hamstrings, right? Rectus fem is the quad. Biceps femoris, hamstring. Your short head originates on the linea aspera, comes down to about the head of the fibula, adjacent surface of the tibia, right in there, okay? If that muscle's overly tight, it will pull the tibia in that bent position. It will laterally rotate the tibia. Remember the other day we were talking about the fact that your tibia in a bent position can rotate under your femur a little bit? That part of the biceps fem, if it's overactive, it will just pull that toe right around. It can. Okay? So think about what we got here. So we got 3 possible muscles. Lateral part of the gastroc, soleus, short head of the biceps fem. So what are we going to do with that overactive musculature? Think about it. Overactive means what? Tight.
Tight.
Yeah, it means tight, right? So what are we going to do with that overactive tight musculature? We are going to stretch it. Hold that thought. And
Loose.
what else? What do we talk about all the time? We're gonna roll it, right? We're gonna SMR. Self-myofascial on that overactive stuff. We're gonna get rid of some of those adhesions.
Adhesions.
And then we're going to correctively mobilize that musculature. So here you could do some static and PNF stretching with the gastrocs, with calves, right? Some hamstring stuff, etc., including also then our dynamic mobility. Okay? So, we think about this then. So if we've got something that's overactive, well, the toes are turning out. What is going to be the underactive musculature? Well, one, if the lateral part of the gastroc is overactive, medial part of the gastroc could be a little bit underactive. Okay? The medial hamstring complex. When I say medial hamstring complex, what am I talking about? If I say medial hamstring complex?
Inside.
Specifically,
Inner part of the.
which ones? Medial, what muscles make up my medial hamstring complex? This would be good to know for next Thursday, by the way. That's quads. Think about it. Which muscles? It's 2. Both sound kind of similar. Kate's favorite muscles. Make up the medial part of the hamstring complex. What?
Medial.
Nope. Nope, that's a rotator cuff. You're thinking though. Rectus? No. Rectus fem is a quad. I heard somebody say it though. Nope.
Gluteus. No.
Semitendinosus and the semimembranosus.
Tendinosis, seminosis. I remember now.
You get too easily. The semitendinosus and the semimembranosus will be underactive. Remember, the semitendinosus and semimembranosus are medial rotators. They're medial rotators. So if those muscles are weak, it means they're not resisting that lateral rotation. They're not pulling the toe back to where it's supposed to go, right? Kind of in that same vein, we get the sartorius, the gracilis.
The gracilis.
The muscle we didn't talk about, but the popliteus. It's a real small muscle, kind of on the back of the knee. Real small muscle, medial back knee, will be underactive.
Do all people have that one?
Say again? Yes, the popliteus, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so now, if we are going to
Popliteus.
roll lateral gastrocnemius, that means, so when we roll, even with the calf, we're not going to have the toe straight up, we're going to tip it out to the side, right? Roll that lateral stuff. What are we going to do with this stuff? What are we going to do with the underactive stuff? We're going to strengthen, right? We're going to activate. We can activate isometrically. You know, we can activate actively, dynamically as well. Excellent. Okay? So that's what we're doing here. We're watching. We're diagnosing. And we're diagnosing movement deficit. Questions? You know, stuff like this, so you guys know for your nasal test and such, kind of heavy on stuff like this. So knowing these muscles, you know, if the toes turn out in an overhead squat assessment, which of these muscles is overactive? I want to know that. Cool. Questions? Questions about toes out? Amy.
You said three things. You activate it, strengthen it, and what else?
No.
You said something else.
So we can activate it isometrically or dynamically.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question there,
Go
guys.
ahead, Oscar.
What if a person is sort of like a pigeon-toed? Or,
Question is, why are they that way in the first place?
right?
Is it muscular or is it structural? Now, if it's structural, maybe they've got a retrograded femoral head. Femur sits medially rotated. That's different. Not much we can do about a lot of that kind of stuff. But you know, a lot of people, I mean, pigeon-toed for it's soft tissue stuff. If it's soft tissue stuff, then it's something we can work on. Cool?
Cool.
All right, now, the other thing that we look at from the anterior view is the knees. And what we're looking at is, do the knees move inward? The knees move inward. And then we'll look at our over and our under. Okay, so now when I squat, I'm here. I squat, and instead of my knees, where are my knees supposed to track? Yeah, right over the toes, like second and third toe. Pardon me, second and third toe, right? So now the knees move here, either on the way down, here, or you'll even see it on the way. You know, they'll get down here, but then when they go to move up, get that swoop, that dive, right? So that inward movement of the knees is actually, it's a combination of two movements going on simultaneously. One, hip adduction, movement towards the midline, right? But in this position, your hip can't really truly adduct. Why? Well, because your foot is planted to the floor. So what happens is that in order for the knees to kind of dive in like that, the hip will simultaneously adduct and medially rotate. Okay, so it's a combination of adduction and medial rotation. This is very common. We see this a lot. Okay? Now, so let's see what we can think of. Now, you guys have it right in front of you, but let's see if we can do it without. So, if I'm here, my knees move inward when I overhead squat. What are some of the muscles that are going to be overactive in that instance? What's going to be working too hard? Think of the easy ones first. Think of the easy one first. Could be a little bit because bicep femoris is an adductor. Yes, absolutely. What else? Say again. So I got biceps fem. Again, because biceps fem is an adductor. Yes, absolutely. What else you got? Oh, think about it. What else would cause your hip to adduct?
Your adductor complex.
Your adductor complex, right? All 5 of those adductors that we talked about. Gracilis, adductor magnus, longus, brevis, pectineus, right? And here, these two, TFL. You guys remember what TFL is? What's TFL? Tensor fascia latae.
Latte, yep, latte.
Up here. And the vastus lateralis. Full name being vastus lateralis oblique. So you'll see the abbreviation VLO. Okay, but if we remember, the TFL isn't a hip adductor, right? It's a medial rotator, but that's fine. Think about what is the insertion point of the TFL. What is the insertion point of the TFL? Nope. Nope. Origin point. That's origin. What's the insertion point? It inserts into the... close. Flip it. The IT band as opposed to the TI band.
The rubber band?
TI's band would be a rap band.
TI's band.
TFL inserts into your IT band. Your IT band ultimately inserts into the tibia. But if I'm looking at it here, if I got a femur here, I got this IT band basically running right down here, right? I'm going to anchor it up on my femur just for the purpose of being able to demonstrate this. So I've got an IT band running right down here, okay? That IT band is tight, okay? How many of you guys are familiar with the concept of a bow, as in bow and arrow?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everybody's got a bow, right?
Oh, yeah,
What's a
yeah.
bow? It's a stick with a rope attached at both ends. Okay? Right? What happens when I tighten that rope? It bows the stick, doesn't it? And which way does it bow? Does it bow towards the string or away, right? So, if I've got that IT band running down the lateral side of my femur, if that IT band gets tight, what's it going to cause the femur to do? Bow away from that band, right? So it's literally going to pull. We call it the bow effect. So, and both, what we see is both the vastus lateralis, because remember, vastus lateralis, that part of the quad, crosses the knee as well, right? If those muscles are tight, they create that bow effect and force the knee inward, right? Very unfortunate. So again, what are we going to do here? We're going to take the roller. We bet dimes to dollars. We're going to find adhesions in the adductors, in the TFL, right up by the hip, and finding adhesions in that TFL down the IT band sucks. Yeah. People who go to, oh yeah. And probably down the lateral side of the quad. Okay?